A breakthrough for Britain in the Brexit talks hinges on Boris Johnson persuading the EU that he is willing to end the negotiations without a deal, according to a leading figure in one of the world's most respected foreign policy think tanks. Jonathan Eyal, international director of the Royal United Services Institute, argues the two sides are caught in a game of chicken, with France pulling strings behind the European Commission. He says Remainers have encouraged the EU to push Britain harder and claims France thinks the UK will blink first in the negotiations, allowing President Emmanuel Macron to portray himself as a great defender of French national interests. Mr. Macron, he says, has sought to use the dispute over fishing rights to strengthen support ahead of the next presidential election in coastal communities where he could be vulnerable to Marine Le Pen's hard-right National Front, now renamed National Rally. Mr. Eyal stresses that the risk for France is that if Britain walks out, then French fishing could be left in an even worse position than is on the table, with other EU member states blaming France for the collapse of talks. But he warned the feeling that is pervasive in Paris is that they can still maintain European unanimity on squeezing Britain and that Britain will ultimately be willing to be squeezed. Emphasizing the importance of the Prime Minister convincing France he is serious about leaving without a deal, he said, the problem that he had is that the no-deal option has never looked quite credible enough to persuade the French that they should not go any further in this gamble. That's the snag, that's the difficulty that the Prime Minister has. Mr. Eyal said it was always the case that the French would be pulling strings behind the Commission, and described how France has been able to manipulate the EU. All I can say is that for the French the European Union is the gift which keeps on giving, he said. It allows them to put pressure on other countries and it allows them to hitch everyone to what very often, not always but very often, are just French national interests dressed up as European Union interests. A key mistake by the UK, he argues, was to focus diplomatic attention on trying to influence Germany. The curiosity of the British position has been that repeated prime ministers, both Theresa May and Boris Johnson, looked to Germany to tone down the French pressure, he said. They believe the Germans will somehow pull a rabbit out of the hat by putting pressure on the French.